Can you hear the dog? Let me just let him in. Probably better.
That works. That works. We do not.
Hey, Joe.
We're not opposed to canines on this show.
I know. Come, hey, Joe, come. Come
Oh,
on. No,
speaking of canines, I do need to close my office door so the cats don't come in. Just a second.
ours don't come in here. They only make. Wait a minute. Come on, Edgar, come. Hey, wait a minute. Can you see him? I'll lift him up slightly.
He.
He's an old one. Gosh.
Oh, he's. Oh.
He's an old darling, huh?
Oh, gorgeous.
He's probably about 15 or he's probably about 15 or 16 years old. He always lies under my sheets at night, huh? But
I'll be right
I can't
back.
let him in here.
I'll be right back.
See you then. I'll be back. Or was it Schwarzenegger? There, Joe. Good.
That's the thing about going live. See, that's the thing about going live, Nick, is that Eric is joining us now, is everyone gets to see the warts and all. Everyone gets to see the warts and all of setting up to record. Now, Eric is currently in the green room. Let me get him added to guest one.
You're breaking up. For some reason, you're breaking up. Huh? Did you hear that?
Yes.
Did you get the same thing as well? It was breaking up.
I'm not hearing any breaking up.
I've got a 100 megabit line, so it should be okay. Because I've got the TV also going through the IP in the other room.
All right.
But that's been on for about 2 hours now.
And there's Eric.
And here I am.
I can't see
Except
him.
for microphone is not working. I can't get my well, how's my audio?
I can hear you.
That's a question. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure it's that good. I can't get it to go through the H8. I had it fine last time. I don't know what happened.
Well, it's
right,
better.
well,
it's better than the audio problems we had with Nick.
Oh, is it?
What problems? I think the problem could have been with the headphone speaker on the Mac Studio, because it's a multi device.
Oh.
In other words, it's a high impedance, and I don't know why it didn't work. But now I'm using these wireless or Bluetooth Sony's.
I am disappointed. Yeah, I'm disappointed that Apple couldn't put a line out on the Mac Studio.
Yeah.
And the other thing I don't like, you know what I don't like, is the power button at the back on the Mac Studio. You got to find it somehow. You got to fiddle around. It's like when you've got a Mac Pro on the floor here, and because it's all embedded behind the aluminium. So in other words, you've got to go around like this and say, is it there? Is it there? So if you're blind, you're great. Yeah.
That is what I miss the most. That is what I miss the most about not having Gaz on the show all the time, is the word aluminium.
Yeah.
Aluminium.
Yeah. Aluminium.
Okay.
I'm not making fun. I'm enjoying it. I love to hear. So Eric, meet Nick. Nick, meet Eric.
I can't see. Can't see Eric.
I know I can't see him.
You can't
see him?
Thank
God for that, you're going to say, yeah?
What if you can switch your studio's view from the stream, or from your camera to the stream view?
Share screen. What's share
No,
screen
not share
mean?
screen.
I
What
mean,
you want to?
no. It's only when you wanted to see my Mac Pro. No, the Mac. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but you should be able to change what you can view. You can view what's going out to the stream, or you can view
Hmm.
just yourself.
At the moment, I've got you in the middle, large. I'm on the left hand, slightly down below on the left, as a miniature
Yeah, that's the
screen.
same
That's
with
all I
me.
can see.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Maybe
right.
Mike didn't pay his subscription on Ecamm, and that's why he's only getting the cheap version.
No,
Ha
I'm
ha
paying for
ha.
the full subscription here.
Okay. Well, I would have got a better deal because I'm non-profit.
You do have it? You use Ecamm?
I've used it before. This is
Yeah.
the first time. I've never actually used a Brio before. It's the first time,
Well, you just got that camera.
and this is my first pod. I know. I got it a couple of days ago. Hooked it up. I checked everything worked fine. I used the other program. What's it called? Snagit.
Hmm.
Did a quick recording. Worked fine.
Yeah.
Picture of my screen. Picture of myself down below.
Excellent.
Yeah, I don't see Nick either. So I don't know. Maybe
As I
it's
told you yesterday, I'm at
UT
Liverpool Lills, which is down in San Francisco, Eric.
Yeah, yeah, you said that. Yeah, and you liked it?
Yes, we stayed at Presidio, which was about half a minute's walk just around the corner. And this place full
Yeah.
of NFL guys, these tough guys in there. You know? And we went and had a meal and on a regular basis in the evening. Great. And I said, "Is this place safe? You know, the hotel." And the owner of or the manager of the travel
Oh,
lodge said, "Next door's
I
an
think something went.
pe- old age old age pensioners home, and they just walk across the road, freely. Something you
Oh,
don't get
wow.
over
Oh,
here,
I did.
because we were staying. I think we got a problem with
You
the
you
delay
there?
because when I speak or you speak, I don't know how we're going to manage this.
We'll
Yeah.
just
Well, I heard you broke up when you were talking.
add a
Uh-huh.
little pause after someone finishes talking before we jump in.
Hmm.
Sounds good. Just like they do on TV,
As a reminder
but they're doing
to
satellite.
as a reminder to the nobody who's watching right now. No, there might be, there might be a couple people in there, but we're recording the audio show. That's what we're doing here today. We're recording the audio show. So, this is the behind the scenes warts and all of recording for Mac Eyes
Hmm.
Only. And this will be edited down into the final audio show that gets released into the feed.
So in other words, no video. That's
Yeah,
good then, yeah.
this is pretty much just the warts.
Uh-huh.
Just the warts. I'm seeing both of you okay, so that's good.
Hmm.
Yeah. And-
Don't forget, I was up at 4 o'clock this morning, and now it's
oh,
8 minutes past 7 in the evening, 7 p.m. over here.
So what I hear Nick saying is, please get a move on so we can wrap
get
this up
going.
and I can go to bed.
Yeah.
No,
I
I've still
think
got to
so.
eat. I
I
haven't
think
eaten yet.
I I
You're
I'm
breaking up.
yeah.
Mike's breaking up. Mike's breaking up.
Yeah, before when you were talking, Nick, you broke up. It like echoed
Uh-huh.
a gazillion times. You broke up. I don't know what happened.
but he's okay now.
Um, I can't understand it
Yeah.
because Do you want me to tell my wife? I mean, now wait a minute. The TV, the IPTV next door, has a dedicated 40 megabit per second line. In other words, it doesn't matter what we do on the internet; it doesn't affect this. So, in other words, I mean, I've had no problem so far. I've got no other devices going out on the air. or on the internet.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we're
I
good.
shouldn't either,
I think we're
actually.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's get started. So I just took some notes on the email I sent out the other day. Basically, I want to break this down into a couple different categories. We want to talk about hardware upgrades. We want to talk about software upgrades and alternatives. Some alternative uses for old Macs. So that's something to think about while we're talking
Hmm.
here. And then knowing when to retire the Mac. That's
Hmm.
the sad part. Knowing when to retire.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. This is the first time I'm doing a three person live stream. I may have to in the future adjust the center camera a little bit on each of these. Oh, scene
Hmm.
locked. Let's see if I can get
You
Eric a
see,
little more.
I can see you full smack in the middle. I can
Okay.
see myself. Chin is down below. I can adjust it, or can you adjust it?
Yeah, why don't you tip your camera down just a little bit?
I've got this program called Logi Tune. I don't know, which is closed for some reason. Let me just check.
There
If
we
I
go,
open it
Eric.
up, or connected, it says here. I go to connection. Okay. So that's going down a bit now.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, just
Maybe I should go up higher on my seat,
oh well that
like
that would
this.
do it too.
Yeah, that's probably better. Now, if I go
Oh,
back
there you
here a
go.
bit, yeah,
There you go.
I'm using this for the first, I'm using the Brio for the first time. I've got this bit here. I've got that bit there, but it doesn't look good, does it?
I
Or
know
should
how
I
to
leave it
zoom
like
and
that?
pan. I know how to zoom and
Is that
pan
okay, or is that better?
my camera, but I'm having a little
Mm.
issue zooming and panning. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Here we go. I got it. I got
Mm-hmm.
it. I think.
So,
Think.
it's a
Oh
good
no,
job
no.
I'm not sending you 4K video.
Oh yeah, don't send 4K.
I can't anyway because my Samsung screen's only HD. So it only does 1980 and what's it, 1980, 1280 or something, or 1920 and 1280 pixels. So I'm right.
Okay, you know what? I'm not even going to mess with that right now. It's we need to get started recording here, so that's what I'm gonna get going on. Let me lock the scene. Perfect. Okay, now it's
This is so
not.
weird. I wonder why this is not working.
Ah, there we go.
Maybe
Okay.
it never worked.
Do that. Okay. Of course, you said there's no videos. It doesn't make any difference if I put this on or not.
Oh, I can see. I don't know if Eric can see that. I can see Monterey Bay, California. You're all set to talk
There
Monterey.
is.
Yeah, I can't see.
That's why I bought it because it reminded me of my operating system at the moment, the OS. Wait a minute. Wait. Yeah, Eric, this one's for you as well. You've either got that one as a good choice, or you've got this one, but it doesn't fit on because of the headphones.
Which one? I
Can you
can't
see
see
it?
him. Which one? I don't see you either. Are they?
Uh, Mike,
Yep,
wakey.
I'm here. Give
Oh,
me
you're
just a
still there.
second.
Uh-huh. I can see your backing anyway. Lee Harvey Oswald, the rabbit, yeah?
Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Yep.
Yeah. This looks rather stupid anyway with my hat. This Panama hat, although they're not made in Panama. Usually they're made in, what is it, next door, not Cuba, is it? Let's see.
No, come
London.
on.
Oh, I forget. I'll take it off anyway.
I'm just looking up one quick thing here.
Let's get American again, yeah, guys.
Yeah, hang on 1 second. I lost my camera.
Mike's getting frustrated now.
Mm-mm.
So I come back tomorrow. So I come back tomorrow morning at 4:00.
What is that? Paprika, Lays.
Lay's. It's American, Lay's. I was watching a film how they make them, and they were making for your, what is it, Thanksgiving Day, a special edition when the lights went out after 2 thunderstorms. Yeah? It was good fun watching it.
I thought Eric was blacked out there, but it was. I think it's just his T-shirt in front of the camera.
No, it's
Is it green?
it is. I don't know what's going on. All right, something's going on.
Don't put a green.
Not sure how that happened.
Don't put a green shirt on, because you won't see yourself after.
Or
The
this.
idea what I mean. Yeah?
Right here. This. This
I
does
know,
not.
Maxsock.
That does not allow green screen. This can't be used with green screen.
Which can't?
This is a hard disk.
The green peace sign. All right, where are you, Eric?
I don't know. I'm not sure why my camera is off. I'm trying to fix it. All right, let's see if.
Oh, you got your NUC, your little network, your little tiny PC.
This is a ASUS. This is a ASUS PN41, which I got for Beata because I didn't want Beata to get frustrated with how to use a Mac, because it's if you've been using Windows, it's very difficult for somebody to just change, I think. I still have the problem with Windows, and I can switch over to my other machine here. I've got as you can see here, guys, like Mike's got one of these as well.
I do. I like that keyboard a lot.
It lights up as well, MX keys. But did you get this as well? The handrest.
Did that come with it?
That's the handrest. Yeah. And this is the what is it? MX2, I think. What do they call it? The master 2S, which I use.
I did not get. I didn't get the palm rest with mine.
This is my mat. And you see the mat? It says 2 hours on Regenbogen, which is our animal sanctuary.
Oh, and Eric just went away. Every time he tries to tweak something, Guy
Cyril does that always, yeah?
Yeah, he does.
Every time I listen to Guy Cyril, I think everybody laughs about his microphones. He must have about 50, 60 microphones, and he still can't get his sound to.
I think he travels with 10 microphones. Oh, what are we looking at there?
That's a Blu-ray. Blu-ray disc.
Nice.
With which I can USB 3. I can hook it up to the Mac Studio. It works. It's from a German company called Tech Pulse 120. It's called. That's a good device. And this is a 2.5 U green enclosure. Sorry, enclosure, which I've got at the moment one of my older 500 gigabyte SSDs inside it. Plug in, plug and pray.
Plug and pray.
Then
You're not running
yeah,
Windows.
no, I'm not on this. This is also an external hard disk drive, which just runs on USB 3, which is fast enough. And I think there's about 8 terabytes in that. And this thing I haven't hooked up yet. It's a one of these things
Oh,
where
those
you
are
can plug
nice.
in a couple of. Yes, we've just got that, and I've got a few other gadgets, but I've also got a couple of these HP, no, what is it, Western Digital external devices here next to me for backup storage, and it's on the right here is a Synology NAS for backing up certain things. Well,
I'm trying to get Eric back on. Give me just a second.
let me just take this. I don't know if this comes off here. I'm going to see if the cable's long enough before it breaks up. But I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, good.
In my
Oh,
room
good.
here.
We're going to lose both of you within the span of 10 minutes.
Can you see this?
It looks like it might be it's an HP laser color.
Yes, it's a Enterprise. It's very hard to see though, but it's big. See that? I got it
Yeah.
non-profit. It's very cheap with a loader, a feeder at the top. On here you can see what I've got on here. These are my old Autic Lansing Autic speakers, which I had, and Synology is here, and these are the two backup devices. This is the Mac Studio. Yeah, and you can see the back here. This is a 2 terabyte USB what was it Thunderbolt 4 enclosure, which has the Samsung 980 Pro SSD in it, M2. You know, at the back here you can see a few connections. Very hard to see. Can you see anything?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
A
I
few
can. I,
connections.
I can see it.
That's the back of. That's the router at the back of my router from the telecom, German telecom. This is the front of the gadget as well. Yeah. The only problem is on the front here you've got only two USB. I think the C, aren't they, at the front, and a slot here. So that's about it. And down below here is my black and white. Well, the HP Pro LaserJet Pro 501. But this thing is a good gadget here. I can do everything. I can scan to network. I can print to network, and it's very good. So I put it back on. That's a quick look at my room here.
I love it. I love it. That's a nice tour.
Good.
I am trying to get. We're trying to
Have I
get
done
Eric
something
back
wrong there?
on.
I'm sorry.
We're thinking maybe his internet went out.
Am I doing a mistake here? Was the
Yeah.
picture better before?
Yeah.
It looks small.
It's. I think you're panned up a little bit. You need to.
But you said it's not. Oh, cool. It's a video stream only for viewers. You told me, didn't you? Like that. That was better. Sorry
All right.
about the face.
Okay. Well, we think Eric's internet went out, and he's just doing a speed test now. It seems to be working, so I think he's going to try to rejoin us, and then we'll get started.
I'm just going back here a bit. I'm going to Zoom. Like that. Good. By the way, I'm running parallels also on this thing.
While
On the
we're
M1.
talking,
It's on in the background as well. But I switched it down, but it will run. I've got on my screen. I've got Photoshop closed at the moment. On my Windows PC, it takes about a minute to open before I get started, and I keep going like this. On the Mac Pro, you hit the button, about 2 seconds later, you've got the nice picture. I've got Audition here as well. I've got Word, Outlook, Affinity, Chrome. I'm using Chrome at the moment because it's supposed to be better for Ecamm. Then, what is it, Neo, Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro, Apple TV, music and that stuff, Paramount Desktop. My Recipe Manager 3 is good. Spotify, Clean My Mac X. Ulysses, or whatever. Dropbox, which I don't use much now. ViewScan is a good thing. Gemini 2. Oh, this goes on and on, yeah. That's only part of my list.
It's all running at the moment.
No, it's not running, but I could run lots of things. I can run like Photoshop and talk to you. Nothing would happen. If I went here on Photoshop, I'll click on it, double click. It's
You're
open.
tempting fate.
I'm still there.
I'm still here.
I'll close it now. Yeah. At the bottom, it's still with the dot, so it's open. I'll press right, close. But don't forget, do you remember I sent you a list of all those programs on the old Mac Pro? They were all open, and they all worked.
And no slowdowns. That's the amazing thing. The efficiency with which Apple has designed not only their hardware and software to be able to allow us to do that sort of thing with this new hardware when, this 2018 MacBook Pro in front of me chugs just having Ecamm running. Looks like Eric might not be able to join us again.
He's probably going down to the pub.
I'm going to try a couple things this time out.
I should have bought some of my what is it? Gemüsesaft, as they call it. Tomato juice, and which I drink every evening. You don't have to worry. I've had no alcohol this evening.
Well, this is coffee. This is coffee.
Yeah.
This is
Plus,
Usagi
so in other
Yojimbo.
words, yeah. So in other words, you've got this amount of coffee and that amount something else.
And speaking of Los Angeles, this is from the Japanese American National Museum in Los Angeles.
Good.
Went there with my aunt a few years ago. My aunt and my daughter went there a few years ago. It's a wonderful museum. If you've never been to Los Angeles, anyone who might be listening to this, if you've never been to Los Angeles and you're interested in Japanese culture, Japanese history, you need to check out the Japanese American National Museum. I'll give them another plug. Here you go. Another plug for the Japanese. Whoop, there we go. Yeah, that is hard, isn't it?
Yes.
All right. So here, give me 1 second, Nick, okay?
Time, it doesn't matter.
Okay, Eric, I think Nick and I are going to go ahead and get started. Just go ahead and join in as soon as you can.
I'm not even using a VPN. Although I have one on here, ExpressVPN. Sponsored by Mike Potter.
Well, why don't we get started, Nick?
Okay.
Eric has said something's going on his end. He can't get reconnected. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll bring Eric in as soon as we can. So I'm going to attempt something I didn't do last time. I completely forgot to do last time, and that's put the little stinger at the beginning of the show here. So you, as we record, you may see me looking off to the right, or let's see, from your
You're
viewpoint, it
looking.
might be to the left. I'm just
To
looking
the
at my
left.
monitor off to the right here and looking at you. Your video and Eric's video when he joins will be on my right, stage left. Stage left?
Everything is the opposite way around. So when you look to the right, I see you on the left, and when I go to the left, it looks as if I'm going to the right.
Exactly. So that
Okay.
you may see me looking off to the side at that point. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to be switching as I introduce folks. So let's just see how this works. And again, Eric will join us as soon as he can, hopefully. All right, we are 34 minutes in. That's my notes for starting. Here we go.
You're listening to the Escapecast Network.
It's For Mac Guys Only, episode number 394 for August 26th, 2022. Rise of the Macintosh. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Mac Guys Only, the show for the Mac community, where we share our thoughts and opinions on current Mac news and events. Well, this episode and a couple future episodes that we've got in our pockets is going to be a fun one. Well, it'll certainly be fun to a Mac nerd like me, who not only loves to use the Mac, but also loves to get the most from his Mac hardware investments. Now, this episode is actually going to be a first in a series of episodes. I'm bringing new life to older Macs, specifically software and hardware upgrades that you can do to keep that old Mac humming along, or maybe to give it new purpose. And for this part, I want to focus solely on OS X or Mac OS software and hardware updates with no alternative operating systems or hacks involved. Well, not at this point anyway. Before we get to that, though, I would like to introduce everyone to a special guest. This is someone I've been wanting to get on the show for quite a while now. He's a longtime listener for Mac Guys Only, going back to at least 2016. He's a frequent emailer and someone who I'm happy to say I can now call my friend. Joining us from 7 hours in the future, direct from Germany, it's Nick Bequet. Guten Abend, Nick.
Guten Abend, Mike.
How are you?
Okay?
How's everything on your Friday evening there, 7 hours in the future?
Well, we just had a lovely thunderstorm, and I got drenched, and the wheelbarrow is half full, with water and stuff like that, and it's quite sticky at the moment. So that's what it's like. The weather's, and this is probably going on at 10 o'clock this evening. We'll get the second burst.
Excellent. Since you're new to the show, why don't you take a couple minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself, just a couple minutes, and how you came to be a Mac user?
Well, let me think about it. First of all, I worked as a broadcast engineer, and this was first of all in Cologne for the British Forces Broadcasting Service, or BFN formerly, years and years ago, like AFN, American Forces Network, and then moved on to Berlin, and stayed there till the Allies pulled out in 1994, and that was that. And it was a great time, but they didn't have any Macs at the station, and then I went to German local radio. I did many years there till 2009, and they did have Macs. The funny thing was they had a Mac, or what they had, but they purchased two of these great what do they call them? Power Mac G5s.
G5s,
And
yeah.
Yes, for the production studios. What happened was that I had to unbox them. So the guy came in, gave me the box, and said, "Here's the Mac, you can open it." And I lifted the thing, and nothing happened. He said, "You got to lift it a bit harder." So I did, and about 2 feet high, the thing dropped out, and that was the end of that. So the G5 died. So, but I was told I wasn't the first person to do that. So that was. I did have a G4, one of these blue plastic looking things
Oh,
from
sure,
Apple.
sure.
That was a good thing, but I I didn't really get onto it. It was something different, you know. It was um, you know it took time for me to get used to it, and so I left it aside. But then what happened later on? I did have oh I did had a problem with my Windows device, which suddenly this was years and years on. Um, that the actual program suddenly died and died and died. Yeah, maybe I'm going too fast. Do you think so?
No, no, no. This is great. So
Or,
this is really how
or do you,
this is how you got to be a Mac user.
yes, because the Windows PC died. I was running things like Outlook and Word, and every time you was typing something in, about half an hour later, it suddenly crashed. And I thought, what am I going to do now? I thought, what alternatives do I have? So there's, like Linux, or is it,
Sure.
yeah, Linux,
Mm-hmm.
and there's Mac. There's no Mac. With Linux, I knew certain programs wouldn't run, but I knew on the Mac you've got plenty of things you can do with it, and also at the time you could either use Boot Camp, which I never used, but I used something like VMware or later Parallels, so I knew this would work. So I looked up on the network and I came across a non-profit organization, and they sold me one for 399 euros, and this was a single quad core, I think 2.66 gigahertz, four core, what is it? Mac Pro
Sounds about
with
right.
eight gigabytes of RAM, and this thing arrived. Now the Mac Pro. It was a 2009er, early 2009, and it had firmware. What was it? 4.1 on it. So it was just a basic thing, and it was. I bought it 2016, which made it like it was running at least for 7 years when I bought it. And then normally nobody buys a 7-year-old uh, second-hand PC because a PC probably would die. But the thing is, with the Mac Pro, the Apple Mac Pro, it was a great device. It looked brilliant, and it was you could take everything out of it. You open the lid, you could pull out the tray. You could change things on it. And you could upgrade it like a PC, which I loved. What do you call it? Modular. You can see I've been in Germany for a long time, so I've got to think sometimes. Yeah? Oh, by the way, let me just go back a second. Going back to the Mac Pro, when it arrived, it's fixed on. Well, the base of the Mac Pro has like 2 feet. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When it arrived, on the left-hand side, it had been damaged. So I complained about it, and they said, "Look, the only thing we can do is send you a second one." So I had a second Mac Pro without the lid. I said, "No problem, I'll take it. I got it for free." So I got spare parts as well. That was a good thing.
Okay. Okay. Now, so that's kind of how you got to be in the Mac ecosystem. You're basically you were working for this production studio. If I understand correctly, you're working for the production studio. They did have some Macs in there. You broke a G5 Mac, which
Oh, Mac, yeah.
your experience pulling that out of the box actually reminds me very much of the first time I opened up a G4 Cube. Now, we had ordered a G4
Mm-hmm.
Cube for work when I worked for an advertising agency back when those were new. And the other guy who worked in IT and I convinced the ad agency that we needed a G4 Cube. And so we ordered it and it came in. And I still have it to this day. It's in a box in the next room right
Mm-hmm.
now. But we ordered it. We took it out of the box. We didn't drop it, mind you. did not drop it.
Oh,
But
good.
one of the first things we did, because it was so heavily advertised that you could do this, is we took it out of the box, flipped it upside down, pushed that little handle, and sucked the guts out of the
Great.
inside of it. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, it was an amazing experience, and it's still to this day, I think, one of the best engineered small Macs that Apple has ever made. Quite
Mm-hmm.
honestly. Now I want to talk some more about the upgrades that you've done to your Mac Pro over the years. Before we do that,
Okay.
we have Eric is joining us again. Let's see if I can get him into. I don't see video from Eric.
Seems as if I've got a better line than Eric does. I'm from San Francisco, is it? Around there?
He's actually Southern California.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, maybe Eric is not joining us. I don't know. It says he's in the green room, but I can't see him or hear him. So, all right. Back to our stories. Back to our stories. Now,
Mm-hmm.
before we get on to the main topic at hand here, I'm going to keep looking off to the right and see if Eric is with us or not. Before we get to the
Mm-hmm.
main topic at hand, I did want to take care of a little housekeeping. And that is last episode, I actually misspoke a tiny bit when I said that we would be recording the show live every other week. Really, what I should have said is the second and fourth Fridays of each month. Now, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't long after we recorded that last episode that I looked at the calendar and I said, uh-oh, I messed up.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we ramp things back up here, the very first thing I did is I reached out to Eric and said, did I mess up or is this what we thought we were doing? And he said, no, you messed up. So, as we ramp things back up here at For Mac Guys Only headquarters, I want to make sure that everyone knew that barring holidays or other goings on that would require us to reschedule family events, trips, what have you, which will happen, the For Mac Guys Only recordings will take place on the second and the fourth Friday of each month. That way we're consistent. That way you know when to find us on YouTube, which is youtube.com/FMEOTV. But the second and fourth Friday each month. Now, if we look ahead to September, that would be the 9th and the 23rd, and October would be the 14th and the 28th. Now, thanks to Apple, our schedule for September is already messed up because their far out iPhone event is taking place September 7th. So that week, there won't be a regular show on Friday the 9th, but we will live stream our reaction time episode on the 7th. Okay, so did I confuse everyone enough already? Good.
Yes.
If you're not sure, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, it's youtube.com/FMEOTV. And the next live stream will always be listed along with a handy dandy little notify button. So if you want to be reminded when the next live episode is going to go out, just click that notify button and you'll get notifications from YouTube that that's about to happen. Now, if you don't care about tuning in live, which is absolutely fine, no problem, just stay subscribed with your favorite podcatcher and you will get the latest episodes just like always. Okay. All right. Now Eric appears to be in the green room. He appears to not have any audio. This is fun. This is
I
fun.
know the feeling. I know the
Can you hear
feeling
me
in the
now?
audio, yes?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Where
I
did
have
you
no idea
go?
what's going on. Well, you know what? I think my internet screwed up for a second, and then it was probably me from the rest of that. But because I mean, it should be. I've got 900. I've got basically a gigabit connection, and then an upload. I've got 40 megabits, so there shouldn't be any problem. But my camera won't work. So I have had to switch to my other camera, so that's why you get the nice side profile on me as opposed to straight on, because it was the only thing I could get going because I'm in the room with the monitors and external camera, external webcam, and it just, I don't know what's going on. So
All right.
that was that.
No problem at all there. We just went ahead and started the episode. I just went to, I just told folks about the second and fourth Friday, a little reminder there about that, where to go on YouTube, youtube.com/FMEOTV. And that if they don't care about signing in live, they can just subscribe just like they always have and get the latest audio show just like always.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, now, okay, sure. Now you're up tall, so I need to readjust you again. Hang on one second.
Oh, did I screw it up? I can move it back up again. I thought because it was so high, the monitor.
No, hang on.
I
can adjust you. There we go.
All right.
There we go. All right. Relock the scene. Lock the scene. Okay.
Lock it down.
Okay. So that is an edit point, not for the live stream, obviously.
Right.
That'll be my edit point for audio. Okay. Oh, now Eric is down below his desk.
Sorry, I just said something down. But
okay.
I'm still here.
Eric doesn't know that. This is my first podcast, by the way. I've never done one before.
Well, we're going to have to get you on more, Nick.
I probably screwed it up a bit at the beginning, I know that, but then that's life.
Well, actually, I think this is my first podcast too, considering how well I've done so far. So,
me too.
Just getting the equipment working.
Me too. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce you, and then we'll move on, Eric.
Okay.
I just wanted to catch you up to where we were. Okay, and so that brings us to 49:54 for edit. Okay, great, wonderful. Here we go.
You got an app for that?
Okay, and joining us now is Format Guys Only co-host, and I should mention, certified good egg, Eric Erickson. Howdy, Eric.
That's me, good egg. Yes. How you doing? Sorry, I'm late.
You know, technical difficulties will be the par for the course as we move forward in these live streams.
Yes, it is, especially for me.
You know, I was just telling folks that we kind of messed up, or I messed up, when I said every other Friday. We really are going to be recording the second and fourth Friday of each month.
Right.
For consistency.
Right. So there might be, right. There might be times that there isn't a fourth Friday or something that,
Well, I think there'll always be a fourth Friday, but there might be a fifth Friday.
Oh, right.
And
it's not always at the end of the month.
Right. I was sticking with that, 4 weeks to a month thing in my brain when I said that, and that's of course totally wrong.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that Eric is with us, I also wanted to mention one more thing. We did get some listener feedback on the last episode from my pal Jim R. Jim's a good friend of mine. And when I talked about command dragging the background finder windows around, he wanted me to make sure to mention that you can hold down command and drag any background window around, not just the finder windows. Yeah.
Not just the finder,
Yeah. So, of course, Jim is absolutely correct. My brain was in finder mode since that's what I was talking about. But that tip works with any windows that you have on screen and might need to take a peek at. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. I just used that actually a few minutes ago. It's a very handy one.
It is incredibly handy. Hold down command, click and drag that background window, and then you can see what's in the background there without giving it focus, without bringing it to the foreground. Yep. Great tip and great reminder. Thanks, Jim. Okay, so let's move on to this week's topic, which is bringing new life to old Macs. Now, we've all been there. We've made a big investment in a new iMac or a new MacBook Pro, and now a mere 5 years later, Apple tells us, hey, guess what? Your perfectly functional MacBook Pro won't get the latest version of macOS. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Apple. And as Apple continues to complete their promised, now it's a 2-year cycle. They promised a 2-year cycle of moving all Macs to Apple Silicon. And unless I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, we're only one Mac away from that being complete. And that would be the Mac Pro.
The Mac Pro, yeah.
The move to peel off support for Intel-based Macs is only going to accelerate. Not dissimilar, I should point out, to what we saw with the PowerPC to Intel transition back in 2005, 2006. It was very, very similar. People who purchased a PowerPC Mac late in that cycle were disappointed to find out that they only got a few years of life out of it, whereas folks who bought some of the early Intel models ended up with 8, 9 years of life out of it. And that's kind of where we are now. I just advised someone, and you guys can chime in on this too, but I just advised someone yesterday not to even consider an Intel Mac, which is a shame because they're wonderful machines. But if you're looking at a new Mac and you want something with some longevity, it's really, really hard to recommend an Intel Mac right now unless you have a very specific need for that platform, like virtualization. What do you think, Eric? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. And, unless there's something that OpenCore can do or whatever that, somehow it can, run. I guess it, will sort of remain to be seen. If the PowerPC jump, the Intel, from PowerPC probably was, well, I don't know. I mean, because this is pretty drastic too. The M1 chips and the M2 coming up are pretty fast and a pretty good jump. But I think, one of the reasons they jumped to Intel way back when was because the PowerPC was lagging and they wanted to be able to, keep up, but also do more things. So I think, Rosetta ran for a while, I think at least a couple years into it. But I think there was probably a thing that they were able to maybe implement stuff into the operating system that was due to the Intel chip that they couldn't do before. So they probably cut off PowerPC computers a lot sooner than, they maybe than they would have. But I kind of think too, if you're going to buy a new Mac, and unless you have a real big reason for choosing an Intel, I would definitely, obviously go Apple Silicon. Now, you can run, virtualization you mentioned with the new parallels. I mean, you are able to, looks like, run at least an ARM version of Windows. So it is getting better, but there's still, I think more work to do.
Well, you're absolutely right. You can virtualize ARM editions of Linux. You can virtualize ARM editions of Windows. There is no official release of ARM Windows at this time. So it's kind of this gray area that Microsoft is somewhat allowing folks to take advantage of. But the thing is, if you want to run anything older, if you have a need to run, let's say, Windows 7 or Windows XP or DOS or something like that, and you require x86, you have to go to emulation. And we're going to talk about this in one of the upcoming episodes, Eric. This is actually on the docket. But emulation versus virtualization is two very different things. And I have yet to try it, but before that episode where we talk about this, I am eager to talk about and try emulation of x86 on the M1 Macs. And the reason I'm eager for that is because, think about the computers that we had back in, 2001 when XP was the new hot thing. They weren't all that great shakes by today's standards. I would be surprised if an M1 Max can't emulate x86 for running XP or Windows 7. Not that I need or want to run XP or 7, mind you. But if I wanted to give it a go, if I wanted to run an old game, let's say Stunt Track Racer or something like that, I'm eager to see how well it runs. I'm sure it's going to be sluggish. I know that there are some issues with accelerated graphics and things like that at the moment. But that QEMU, I'm not even sure if there's a proper way to pronounce it, but QEMU is a great...
I think that's it.
is that it? Is a great
Yeah.
way to emulate x86 or PowerPC or many other platforms on an M1 or M2 based Mac. So I'm eager to try it. I haven't tried it yet. Before we have that discussion, I will. Now, Nick, I saw you give the thumbs up to not buying an Intel Mac. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, one of the reasons is that it's a good heater. Not a good heater. The CPUs are. They use a lot because
Yeah.
I was talking about my first Mac Pro, which had Xeon um, chips in them,
Mm-hmm.
and they were using about 130 watts per CPU, which is a lot. It was great in winter. You didn't need the heating system on. And I also I got a second dual CPU Mac Pro, also cheap. So this thing was really heating up my room, which I'm sitting in at the moment. So that was only, I think the main disadvantage with Intel is that like at the moment, I've got this Mac Studio sitting next to me, and I can put my hand on it. I can't feel anything. Yeah? It's very cold, or could be my blood. You never know.
Well, that's an excellent point. And in this day and age, it's more important than ever to make sure that what we're running is power efficient.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not
Yes.
uncommon to see these, head-to-heads of an Intel Core i9 versus an M1 Max or something like that. Oh, look! In this instance, the Core i9 is running faster. Yeah, wonderful, but at what cost? And the cost is usually power efficiency. That is
Yeah.
huge on the Apple platform. And when you compare that, when you compare apples to furnaces, the furnaces lose every single time. And what are you saving? A couple seconds? In these head-to-heads that I've seen, they're really pretty close. So yes, you're absolutely right. This MacBook Pro in front of me right now is an Intel 2018. I can feel the heat coming off of it right now. I can't even imagine
Mm-hmm.
how much power it's sucking down compared to that M1 model Mac that's sitting to my right. And I probably should replace this computer with an M1 Mac Mini and save a little power. But yeah, that's an excellent point and probably one of the big advantages to switching to the new Apple Silicon platform.
Yeah. And it certainly the performance is another. And, yeah, I was just going to reference what Nick said. It's exactly right. In fact, actually, when we moved out here, because I was in a smaller room for my office, I just stopped using the Mac Pro for a while because it was such a space heater and it really heated up and I couldn't handle it. So it just because the room was small and it really was and still is actually, that's something like you said, your MacBook Pro, you can feel the heat coming from it. I have an older Core i9 MacBook Pro too, and it just was using it yesterday and could totally feel the heat, could totally feel the difference, and it's just kind of amazing, that, and I think that is going to be something that Intel is going to have to overcome if they want to stay in the game.
Yeah,
Eric,
go ahead, Nick.
sorry. The other thing is, I noticed I had the dual CPUs, and of course you've got these massive heat sinks there, which radiate so much heat. Then you've got the GPU, like your graphics card, which also uses lots of electricity, juice, and everything inside this thing is really heating up. That is why the silicon stuff hardly uses anything, and you can't hear
Yeah.
it. Anything I can hear is this fly
No.
going around in my room.
Well,
And my squeaking seat.
well, that conversation about heating up our rooms aside, that's actually a poor lead-in. I'll have to admit, that's a poor lead-in to the conversation I wanted to have today. Because the conversation I wanted to have today is how to continue to breathe new life into that old equipment. So let's set aside the power requirements thing and think more from a practicality standpoint, and that is maybe I can't afford a new Mac right at this time, which is the case for a lot of us. I have an investment in this MacBook Pro, this Mac Mini, this iMac, whatever it is. I have this investment made. It still runs great. It still suits my purposes, but maybe there are some things I can do to make it run a little bit better. So what I would like to do is I would like to break this down into hardware upgrades, software upgrades and alternatives, some alternative uses for an old Mac, and then knowing when to retire that old Mac and to move on. So first, though, I wanted to mention why this is so important. It's very important to keep your Macs up to date, or as up to date as you can. And in just one example, and this just hit the news last week. I'm sure most of you have heard the story already, but a critical flaw was revealed in macOS that could allow an attacker to access every file on a Mac. Now, it has to do with the save state. I'm going to link to a Macworld article that explains it a little bit better. That's not the point of this episode, but it is a good way to highlight that, look, if you don't keep your Mac up to date, these kind of things can happen to you. Yikes. Well, the good news, of course, is that Apple has patched it last fall. The bad news is that Apple has only patched it in Monterey and Catalina. Now, why is that? Well, I'm actually not sure why it wasn't patched in Big Sur. I don't know if you have heard anything about that, Eric. But anything older is considered obsolete by Apple and no longer supported. So once Mac OS hits that 2-year mark, all bets are off. And it's actually pretty rare for any bugs, whether they're critical or not, to be patched. So if your Mac can't be upgraded to the latest, So if your Mac can't be upgraded to the latest Mac OS, well, you run the risk of opening yourself up to these types of flaws that, left unpatched, could be disastrous. Now, this is especially true if you fully locked yourself into Apple's ecosystem of iWork, Safari, Mail, and so on. These are apps that rarely, actually I'd say never get updated once Mac OS reaches that critical obsolete phase. Now, that's not to say that if you're correct me if I'm wrong, either of you, but that's not to say that if you're running an obsolete Mac OS that you can't do so in a safe way. And that's what I want to talk about today when we get to software. Before we do that, though, Nick introduced us to himself and how he got involved in the Apple hardware and software ecosystem. But let's talk about hardware upgrades. Eric, how do you approach the topic of hardware upgrades? Are you a get the most from my hardware that I can, like I am, and I suspect Nick is, or do you dump and run to the latest? Or is it maybe a combination of both?
It's probably a combination of both. It seems more and more, I look, well, I guess for quite a while now, for editing and motion graphics and stuff, I look for the best solution for that. So anything that can speed that up or speed up, those efforts for me is a good thing. So I always kind of look at that end, it's probably been a while since I've actually looked at a computer. So I guess probably, I don't want to say I dump and run and get the latest, but when I do get the latest, I usually try to get the best, for what I can get at the time. And that's usually the requirement that I have, is just, it's got to be able to do this faster than what I've got now, and, whether it's rendering or whatever, in that sort of vein. That's why I purchased the the M1 Max MacBook Pro when I did. Obviously, the Mac Studio is probably even better, but this thing is working well, well enough for me now. So
I think that's pretty good advice for most people. In fact, that's the advice I use with my clients usually is when they come to me and say, which new Mac should I purchase? The first question is often, well, what are you going to use it for? That's question one. And you pointed that out yourself. You need the best Mac that you can purchase for the tasks that you do with that Mac, which is audio and video editing. But what do they do with it? What is the primary purpose of your Mac? So that's question one. Question two is the more crass one. What's your budget? And that's super important because you need, these days especially, you need to purchase the most Mac that you can budget for. I don't want to say the most Mac that you can afford. I'm going to say the most Mac that you can budget for. And the reason I say that is because, the M1 and M2 Macs typically start with 8 gig of memory. They typically start with 256 gig of storage. Now, my experience with the M1s this past year has been that 8 gig is great. That's a fantastic amount of memory, and probably the equivalent of when we would have said start with 16 on an Intel Mac. You can start with 8 very safely on an M1 Mac. But storage is critical, and I still am not convinced that 256 is a good minimum for Macs these days. I really feel like 512 should be where they start.
at least,
Yeah, at least 512, and I wish that Apple would bump
I've
that.
got a terabyte.
I'm sorry, Nick?
I've got a terabyte on mine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because you looked at that 512 and you said, that's not going to cut it for me. I don't care how many external drives I get. That 512 is just not going to cut it for me. And I think for most folks...
I also have
Go ahead.
Sorry? I also have a 2 terabyte Thunderbolt 4 SSD, which is connected as well. So I've got 3 plus additional hard drives, 8 terabyte, normal hard drives. So you can add extra stuff to it at a cheaper price, I think. Yeah.
And we're going to talk about this in a moment, Nick, but you and I are a little spoiled, and Eric had one of these too, but we had Mac Pros for so many years that each of them have 4 drive bays in them, and we could pull and insert drives into those bays as much or as little as we wanted to and not have to worry about external storage. But now with the M1 Mac I have running over here, not only do I have an external, actually have the OWC Mini Stack SDX underneath it, and then on the front of it, I have one of those Crucial X6 SSDs, which are amazing little devices. They're a little pocket. I'd say they're maybe 2.5 inches square, little pocket SSDs that are quite a great value. And I have one of those hanging off the front of it. So yeah, having enough storage is important. And when you're purchasing a new Mac, that's something you need to look at for sure. So let's get to you, Nick. We just mentioned it a moment ago. You and I have a bit of a connection throughout the years because we each went through a very similar journey to keep our old Mac Pros alive. I would even venture to say that you went a little above and beyond where I ever went with mine. Now you're...
I got excited.
Now your Mac Pro was a 2009 model. Real quick, and we don't have to go into any super depth here because this is very unique to you. But what are some of the hardware upgrades that you performed throughout the years to keep that relevant and functional for you?
Okay, first of all, firmware upgrade from 4.1 to 5.1, so you can do more. The memory was only 1066, and after upgrading, I could do, what was it, 1333, which was higher. I could even add the higher CPUs inside it, which I did on the single one. One was from 266 to 333. But then eventually I bought a second Mac Pro with dual CPUs and whacked it up to the highest, which was about, was it 3? I forget the number. The dual ones then. But then I also went mad and put 96 gigabytes of DDR3 memory in there, which was good.
That's a lot.
Then I also bought a Cal Digit, what was it, a SATA 3, a PCIe card, which also had the function of eSATA, two at the back and two internal. So what I did is I took a hard drive. You've got on the Mac Pro, you've got the CD or the super drive. I put above it a standard like 8 terabyte or 6 terabyte hard drive in it, and then rerouted the whole thing and did the enclosure underneath, fed it through, went onto the board of the actual what do you call it,
The
the
system
main
board.
board,
Yep.
fed it through with external cables back onto the Cal Digit. I was getting 6 gigabit per second then, instead of the low speed of the 4 bays you've got in there. Plus, I went ahead and got a card with four USB 3s. And then the other thing was I put in an AMD, I think it was an AMD RX 580 graphics card, plus Bluetooth or wireless. I forget which one I had to be changed, and that was about it. But it was a real great. I still got it here, and it still works. The only thing is, as you've mentioned before, the upgrades. You're not getting security upgrades, nothing at all. And I had the last operating system was Catalina on it, so there was no Big Sur on it, and no, what is it, Monterey, and that was it.
Yep. Yep.
That was basically what it was. But also the other thing I liked about it is which you're definitely going into in a moment, is the software. You could run all this stuff in the background, and it was a cheap device, the Mac Pro, for little money. In other words, if you bought a new one, you can't afford it. If I had the same thing on a new system, you'd be paying something like $10,000 or whatever, and I'm getting a system which is 7 years old. It was 7 or 8 years old, and it still worked fine. I could open all the programs and nothing. It didn't die. That was one of the great issues with the Mac Pro,
I
the cheese grater.
I miss those Mac Pros.
I do too, and that's why you and I, Eric, have kept calling for that mythical modular Mac Pro to come back to us again. And some of the rumors hint that maybe there will be some sort of upgradability to the new Mac Pros when they come out. I question that. I question whether that's actually going to be the case.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of hoping,
Okay.
since it was taking him a while to do it, that might be the case. But yeah, I obviously, with the system on the chip, there's probably only so much that they're going to do, to make things upgradable. You can't really make certain things upgradable at that point. But I mean, it would be nice to be able to, at least be able to put PCI cards in and, upgrade things, just like you talked about. You put a Cal Digit, card in there, and it was able to plug in a faster hard drive. Of course, I guess probably won't be room for a hard drive in the new Mac Pro or whatever, but still, it would be great if they made something like that, and at least made it upgradable for certain hardware to put in there.
Well, I agree, and that's something I mentioned on the show before too, that I would love to see a new Mac Pro, not dissimilar to the Mac Studio, not dissimilar to what we have in the Mac Studio, but something with interconnects on the bottom of it, where Apple creates external modular units that you can snap together like Lego bricks and expand it as needed. So whether you want to get a new external graphics card, or you want to get additional storage, or what have you, I don't care if it's a proprietary connector. The fact that I can then expand or enhance it, or let's say, for example, I want to get, I know I mentioned this before and everyone went, ha ha, you're so silly, Mike. But something like an add-on Intel co-processing unit that the system can call on when I want to run specific x86 type software on it. Now, that's a very specialized case, mind you, and maybe that's best left to a third party to do something like that. But wouldn't that be awesome to have that kind of modularity from Apple. Even an external chassis that you can snap onto it that itself has 3 or 4 bays for SSD blades that you can just slide into it. And in a very Apple-like fashion, you don't need to screw them down. You don't need to do anything fancy. They have just these gorgeous rails that you slide it in and it just pops into place. And now you've got this external storage that could be individual drives or could be RAID if you needed to. Some sort of mechanism like that. And while Thunderbolt and USB-C are wonderful for that, it does add mess. It adds complexity by having all these cables, and there's limitations to it, where some sort of proprietary connection I think would be amazing. But again, we'll just have to see. We'll have to see. What is the rumor? It's the M2 Ultimate. Wait, what is the name of the M2 Gargantuan? Ultra. Whatever they're calling the processor that might be in the next Mac Pro. It's supposed to be 4 of them Mac slammed Pro. Together.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right. It's like the Ultra times 2, the Mac Studio Ultra.
Or Ultra, Ultimate, Superman.
Well, I think the current one is Ultra, so probably
Extreme.
The M2 will be
Extreme.
Insane.
Is it Extreme?
Yeah. Extreme.
Could be.
I think you're right. I think you're right, Nick. It's either Extreme or Max Ultra Super Duper. It's something like that. It's something like that. Yeah.
I think it is Super Duper.
That would be great. Now, not every Mac is as easy to upgrade as the Mac Pro, but the nice thing is that many models can be upgraded much more than you might think is possible. Things like memory, things like hard drives to SSD swaps, processor upgrades, which Nick mentioned. Nick also mentioned a firmware upgrade. That kind of slipped under the radar at the beginning, but you did an upgrade on your Mac Pro. You upgraded the firmware on it, Nick, so that you effectively turned that 2009 Mac Pro into a 2010 Mac Pro. And that was a huge difference. When all else hardware-wise was more or less the same, it was the firmware that made a difference. And you can upgrade the firmware on that to give it enhanced or additional capabilities that the 2009 lacked. So that's important to do a little research and see what you can do with it. And interestingly, you can even do video card upgrades for many iMac models. So iMacs that are older than, was it 2012? So 2011, 2010, you can upgrade many of the video cards. They're modular in there, and you can upgrade them to make them metal compatible. So here's a couple of resources I use. I want to list these, and then I'm going to throw it over to you guys if you have any resources that you know of off the top of your head. But my favorite resources, when I want to look up what I can do with an old Mac, the very first place I go to is a website called everymac.com. EVERYMAC.com, everymac.com. You plug in your serial number, you plug in your model number, you plug in anything you know about that. You can even drill down through their list of different Macs and phones and all that kind of stuff, and they will tell you exactly what you can do. Is the memory upgradable? Is the storage upgradable? What version of Mac OS and OS X can it run? It's a great place to start to see what is possible with the Mac that you're about to perform surgery on. So everymac.com is probably the first website I turn to. Now, Nick, it sounded like you were agreeing with that.
I have it as well, because I sometimes I looked up what type of device I have, and I can't remember, like I've got an iPad Pro, and I didn't know it's 9.7, one of the first one. I think it's the first one. I didn't even know what number it had, so you look it up, and it tells you exactly what it's got, the features and everything. That's great. The same thing applies with all the new gadgets as well. Even the Mac Studio, like the Mac Studio. I've also got an old iPhone plus 6 Plus, which still works. I know it's not being updated, so. But I listen to you actually on for Mac OS only, things like that. Every time it comes out with these Bluetooth headphones, so it's good. It still works.
Even things like I had an old iPhone at the office. Now, I'm embarrassed to say how poorly I took care of this little guy, but it was on the floor of my office behind my desk, just laying there on the floor with its little, 30-pin USB cable coiled up on top of it. Poor little dude, just sitting there waiting to be used again. I think it's running iOS 7, but in my head, I thought maybe it was an iPhone 5S. Well, it turns out it's a 4, but the only way I knew that was to look on the back, look at the model number, which I can't recall off the top of my head, go to everymac.com. Despite the name EveryMac, it also covers all Apple hardware. Go to everymac.com, punched in that model number, and it told me, boom, that's the model iPhone you're looking at. And I knew, oh, okay, so this is not the one I can use for camo, which is exactly, I was hoping that it was a newer model I could use for camo, and it wasn't, unfortunately. So everymac.com is a great website.
I was just going to add to that. Well, every Mac, like you said, that's the first website you should go to. Something if you don't have, well, when do you not have a web browser handy? But another good one is Mac Tracker, which is an app that you can get for your Mac or iPhone. It's on iOS and Mac OS both, and that's another great one that has just about all the details, including the startup chimes on all Macs, which I love clicking on that and then hearing the different startup chimes throughout the years. When they really started getting serious about them, I guess.
It's amazing
it's cool.
Amazing how wistful you can get over a startup chime when you hear it again.
It is. It really is.
So the next...
I've got it open at the moment. I've just opened it and it says this Mac Studio 222. Click on it. And it's telling me exactly what's in there. M1 Max.
Actually, that's actually. I'm glad you mentioned Mac Tracker, Eric, because I kind of meant to mention it and I didn't. It didn't make my notes. But you're absolutely right. Mac Tracker is an app that you can get through the Mac App Store. You can get it for iOS. You can get it for the Mac. And as Nick just pointed out, when you run it, it tells you. Well, it not only gives you the opportunity to look up old Macs and to play startup chimes and all that, but it will tell you about the Mac that you're currently running it on or the phone that you're currently running on, which is fantastic.
Really nice.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. The next one that I want to mention is probably not a surprise, but it's ifixit.com. So now that I know what I can do with the old Mac, sometimes I need to know how to do what I want to do with the old Mac. And looking up not only what parts are available, but also how to install those parts is something that iFixit is great at. And if you then need those parts, guess what? They sell them too. And they sell the tools as well. And their tool sets are amazing. I just use their, well, I know there's a term for the screwdriver that we used to use back in the day to open up the Macintosh SEs and all that. They called it a Mac cracker. And I think I'm going to call the little pizza wheel that iFixit sells to cut the tape on the modern iMacs or the modern Intel iMacs, to cut that tape. I'm going to call that a Mac cracker too, because that's essentially what it is. And they sell those as well. And I love it. It's a great, simple to use tool, and it's designed just so that you don't cut anything critical when you use it as you're cutting the tape. So that's a wonderful tool. So iFixit is great. Be sure to check them out, especially for the repair guides and their teardowns. So if you want to see how to, well, it's not always proper. Sometimes their teardowns aren't the proper way to open a device, but then they'll always follow up with proper repair guides later. The next site is Crucial.com. Now, I mentioned Crucial.com. They're a memory maker. And the reason I mention them is because they have a wonderful guide for PCs and Macs when you want to look up how much memory can be installed in a particular device, PC or Mac, as I said. You can drill down to the make and the model, and it'll tell you exactly what can go in it. Now, the nice thing is they'll also tell you if the storage is upgradable. And if it is upgradable, if, let's say, for example, your older iMac has a physical hard drive in it, they'll tell you that, hey, look, our line of SSDs will work in that as well. So that is a great tool to have. It's just a nice thing to have in your arsenal if you want to kind of look up what you can do memory wise, or what you can do with storage on the Mac. And again, not every Mac is upgradable. Not every Mac has upgradable memory. Sometimes to get to the memory or to get to the storage, you have to do a little teardown, which you go to iFixit for. And sometimes you have to cut some tape, and you have to re-glue it together again with new tape. But it works well when you have a good guide at hand. And the last site I want to mention is our friends at OWC, Otherworld Computing. MacSales.com is a great resource, not only for parts for your Mac, but they have a wonderful guide to the particular model Mac that you're working on, and they will tell you what you can purchase, memory, storage, additional accessories, often what they sell, obviously, but they sell some really nice stuff, batteries, things like that. Even if Apple tells you the battery isn't replaceable, very often it is replaceable. So check out a site like MacSales.com, and they'll tell you what you can do as well. So those are 4 of the sites that I often turn to. I guess in some cases they're somewhat obvious, but is there anything that you, Nick, or you, Eric, would like to share? I know you mentioned Mac Tracker.
1 second, you were breaking up a second ago.
I was just going to say OWC, but you mentioned it. So they're also good. I bought memory from them, RAM to add or replace or whatever, and I've had really good luck with it. So they're definitely a good resource, and Crucial too, like you mentioned.
Yeah. Crucial, by the way, is a division of Micron. So that Micron is the parent company. They're the chip manufacturer, and quite honestly, Crucial's. If I'm looking for a replacement SSD or I'm looking for a replacement memory, Crucial is always the first one I turn to. Super reliable, lifetime warranties in many cases for memory, and often 5-year warranties or longer sometimes for storage. So I really like them a lot, and I'll often use them. Some of the other brands I use for memory, I will sometimes turn to Kingston. I will use OWC's memory. And for hard drives, if you want to stick with a spinning hard drive and you don't want to go to an SSD, I will often go with Western Digital Black specifically, and I will also go with Toshiba. Toshiba makes some good drives as well, but I'll often turn to Western Digital first. And to be honest, Seagate is probably the last brand I turn to for hard drives.
Yeah, they've just gotten bad. I don't think I've had a Seagate not give out on me.
Yeah, they don't last particularly long. Yeah, they don't last a long time, which is unfortunate because they're one of the longest running brands. Now, interestingly, one of the very first hard drives I ever installed in a computer back in the 80s was an Epson. Believe it or not, it was an Epson hard drive. Yep.
Wow.
So, all right. So, of course, I guess I should probably mention, I kind of hinted at this a few moments ago. There are some difficulties faced by newer Mac owners. Primarily, with limited exceptions, there are very few to no hardware upgrades available. We mentioned that earlier when we were talking about purchasing a new computer, Eric. Buy the most computer that you can budget for. But I would say that problem is probably magnified by these latest Apple silicon-based Macs. But even as those age out, there are still things that we'll be able to do to breathe new life into those, and that's something I want to talk about in one of the future episodes in this series. So sit tight on that. Okay, let's move on to software upgrades. For this discussion, what I want to do is I want to focus on the core uses for a Mac. Now, I know, Nick, you were mentioning earlier using Photoshop. You were mentioning some of the other Adobe apps. I know, Eric, you're talking about Final Cut and probably Logic. I know you use for music and audio production. I want to kind of set those aside for a moment because while there are fantastic alternatives to all of those, and they will work on older hardware, for the vast majority of people listening, if you're looking at keeping an older device up and running, I want to focus on internet and basic productivity. And that's because when you can't update Mac OS, then it's seriously time to switch things up to stay as secure as possible. And that includes all those core productivity and internet apps. So first, what I want to talk about is browsers and email clients. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Either of you guys can chime in at any point to share some of your thoughts on it. But I feel that the most critical thing to keep up to date on an older Mac, let's say it's a Mac that you can't upgrade Mac OS on anymore. You're at the latest you can possibly run. You went to everymac.com and they said 10.14 is it. You can't go any further. What can you do to stay safe if you're not quite ready to upgrade your Mac? Well, since browsers and email clients are critical to your online life, if your favorite browser is no longer supported because Mac OS can't be upgraded, and I'm pointing at you, Safari, well, then you need to switch to something that is. Now, my favorite browser, and this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone who listens to the show because I've mentioned this several times in the past, my favorite browser is Mozilla Firefox. And there are myriad reasons for this, which Eric and I actually covered quite a lot a few episodes back. But my primary reasons, if I were to break it down, my primary reasons are privacy, security, speed, and compatibility. Now, the best of all with Firefox is that if you want to run the latest version of it, which as of this recording is version 103 point something something, your Mac does not need to be running the latest version of Mac OS. In fact, you don't need to be running anything newer than Mac OS Sierra 10.12, which, by the way, was released in 2016, 6 years ago, nearly 6 years ago. Now, likewise, Mozilla Thunderbird, which I feel is probably the most capable and most powerful email client that I've yet to use. And I know folks like to go simple, but I like to have a little bit more power at my fingertips when it comes to email. Just like its sibling, Firefox, the latest version will run on Sierra. Chrome, believe it or not, if anyone wants to run Chrome, believe it or not, that will run on El Capitan 10.11. And Microsoft Edge, which is Chromium-based, by the way, so I was a little surprised by this, Microsoft Edge requires at least Sierra 10.12. So from a basic internet perspective, that gives you a pretty big window of opportunity to stay safer online while running older Mac hardware and older Mac operating systems. Did you guys have anything you wanted to add to that?
I think you covered it. I probably just Vivaldi maybe, but which is also Chromium based, but probably on older Mac hardware it may not, run as quite as handily. I think it seems like I don't know if it's a little bit graphics intensive sometimes, but no, those are all terrific. They're great browsers. Well, with the exception of Chrome maybe, but.
I would say if you want to run on anything older than 10.12, and I did not look this up for recording, but I would look at WaterFox. WaterFox is a fork of Firefox that is focused on extending and enhancing an older extended service release of Firefox. So it's up to date, it's secure, but because it's based on an older ESR, or extended service release of Firefox, it is more compatible with older hardware. So WaterFox is another one that I would look at. In fact, I did run for a little while, but then Firefox solved some issues I had with it, and I could leave WaterFox behind. But if you don't mind a slightly older looking version of Firefox, WaterFox is a great option as well. Anything you want to add, Nick?
I've got basically the same as you, except for I've got Chrome running here. I've got also Safari and Firefox as well. I use those.
Yep.
And on Microsoft, on Parallels, I've got Chrome and what's the other one? Edge.
Edge, by the way, Edge is great on the Mac. I think if you want a replacement for Chrome on the Mac, Edge is probably the one to get. The other one to look at would be Opera. I use Opera as my Chrome alternative. Edge is a fantastic Chrome alternative, and I would pick either of those over Chrome any day these days, which is a shame because Chrome gained its claim to fame by its speed, its compatibility, and its lack of bloat. And yet it has become the Internet Explorer of 2022. So,
Apparently that's just what happens.
it's just what happens, and it's a shame. But I'm excited by the traction that Firefox seems to be getting again, and I hope to see more folks using it because they really, next to Safari, Firefox, and specialty browsers, there are some specialty browsers that do this as well.
Yeah.
But from the core browsers, Firefox and Safari really are the ones, if you're concerned about privacy, those are the two to look at. And I'm excited to see Firefox gaining a little traction there.
I noticed one thing though with Safari, and when you open up certain websites, you said you get the little icon saying, do you really want to open this up and everything?
Yes.
Have you noticed that lately? It's been happening to me. I've noticed that. Yeah.
Well, the next thing I would like to cover apps. Now, the reasons to stay up to date there, again, are vast, but the primary reasons I came up with are security patches, getting the latest features, which sometimes are important, and maybe the most important, compatibility with others. So when Apple decides to no longer provide software updates for the iWork suite, for Pages, Numbers, and Keynote, then it might be time to consider moving on. Now, there are many, many, many great Office apps to consider, especially if writing is your primary concern. But for today, what I'm going to look at is compatibility, as well as full Office suite functionality. So word processing, spreadsheet, presentation package. And in the vein of staying safer, I'm also looking at apps that run locally on your Mac rather than in the cloud. I know there are cloud versions of Pages, Numbers, and Keynote. There are cloud versions of Office. But if we're running on older hardware, older operating system, and we're running a browser that we're running in order to stay safe, we can't run Safari. Let's play it extra safe and run these apps locally on the Mac rather than in the cloud. So that means that I would like to look at Microsoft Office and LibreOffice. And of those two, I would strongly suggest giving LibreOffice the nod. But let's see what they'll run on. As of October 2021, I just looked this up a moment ago. I'm going to switch to you, Nick, because Eric just stepped out for a second. As of October 2021, Microsoft Office 2021 and 2019 both require macOS 10.14. So a little newer than we can get by with in terms of browsers. But if you're willing to run something a little bit older, and I should probably mention unsupported, you could give Office 2016 a try. In fact, you might even be running it already if you have an older Mac. Now, Office 2016 is going to run on OS X 10.10 Yosemite or later. In fact, I know that Office 2016 even runs on the latest M1 MacBook Air running Monterey, because we only just recently upgraded my wife's license for Office 2016 to Microsoft 365 through their family sharing plan, which is fantastic, by the way. But we only just upgraded it, so she was running Office 2016 on her MacBook Air up until just last week, and it was running fine. Now, by contrast, LibreOffice has similar specs in that it supports Macs that are running macOS as old as 10.12, and here's the kicker, as little as 512 megabytes of memory. That's amazing. That's amazing. In contrast, I looked it up. Once I saw 512 megabytes of memory, I looked it up. Office 2021 requires 4 gigabytes of memory on your Mac. Woof.
That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Nick, as you kept your older Mac Pro running, what did you use? Did you stick with Office and iWork, or how did you keep that up to date for
I
productivity?
never used my work. I had the full works, Office,
Okay,
and I got it as a non-profit um, solution. That was good. The same also applies with like Adobe as well. But by the way, I've just checked mine. I've got version local on here, version 16.64 Word, which I use for the
that's the
Mac.
current.
It says
Yeah,
that's current at the moment. Yes, I've got Outlook as well running. I've got let me see. I've got typical Apple Mail, and I've tried a few other ones like Canary, and what's the other one called? Let me just check it on here somewhere. Spark, but they're all different. And I had some problems with importing and sending the the mails out. Certain things didn't work, or it depends if you're using iMac or POP3.
now that was Outlook, you
And
said, right?
yes, with Outlook, yes.
Yeah, well, there's your
We're talking
problem.
about
Stop using Outlook, Nick.
the wife likes. That's the problem. The wife likes it, and I've had everything with all the PST files since what is it 20 years ago. I still have them backed up, so I can access them.
That is the
And
biggest problem with
the
Outlook. The monolithic file
mm,
structure that Outlook uses is its
yeah.
biggest Achilles heel. If one of those files gets damaged, you could potentially lose everything, and that's one thing I really dislike about Outlook versus Apple Mail and Thunderbird that use Mbox format where your messages are stored by folder or by individual messages. It's a much safer way to do it, and I really wish Outlook would bring I'm sorry, I really wish Microsoft would bring Outlook into the 21st century and modernize its file structure, but there's no incentive for them to do that. It was never
Mhm.
really designed for end users. It was designed for the enterprise. So I guess Outlook is just going to be the way that it is forever.
But the other thing is, if you use, I guess, if you use Microsoft 365, then everything is stored on the cloud, unless you want it locally. I have both versions here. The whole thing. I downloaded everything with this, which was very hard because when you download it from in our case volume licensing, Microsoft volume licensing, I had to install it through a what do they call it? Deployment software,
Mm-hmm.
which was a real pain,
It
and it
is.
wasn't easy. It wasn't like before where you plopped in the DVD or and then punched in the registration key and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't work that way anymore.
No, you're
And the problem
absolutely
also
right.
is with also licensing. Can I go to something else? On Parallels, I've got the ARM version of Microsoft, and first of all, to license that was a problem as well. So how I went around it was I looked up on the internet. Somebody who was official Microsoft licensee. Yeah? I downloaded for about $10, as you would say, an official license for Microsoft. Entered the key in it, and it was accepted straight away
Yeah.
because I couldn't use my volume license keys. They call them, what is it, MAK or KMS. It didn't work. It kept on saying, you'd have to license your program, but it works now.
You're
It's
absolutely
fizzing
right.
around, I guess.
You're absolutely right. The new NFP licensing that Microsoft has is a real pain to configure. It's a pain to manage,
Hmm.
and I guess I understand, the reasoning behind it. I suppose, and I'm only projecting here. I don't know if this is the case, but if you are going to get that kind of deal on Office, they want to make sure that you really qualify for it and you're willing to jump through the hoops in order to get it.
Hmm.
But
Yes.
in some cases, I would say that it's like you found, Nick, it's just easier to to buy the license outright as a regular user than it is to even bother with the NFP.
I tried all the keys I had. None of them worked, although they're backward compatible. They're supposed to be. It didn't work. I couldn't enter it didn't accept it. It said, you have this type of license, please enter it, and it didn't work.
Yep.
But then there are always ways around things.
I had a client with the exact same issue, and quite frankly, she needed to call and work with me to get this license installed because it was just far too complex of a task for her, which is a shame. Is a shame.
That's just ridiculous.
I tell you what. Sorry, are you still there? Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up on this Mac Studio my Parallels desktop. Okay, it says starting, and I hit the button in the middle, and this is of course the virtual thing. Now it's opened up now, and I can go straight ahead and open up, let's say, a Microsoft app on it, yeah? Or should I do something else? But at the moment, I can open up a file. It opens up. I better not. I can't see you anymore, so I better cut this out because I'm scared if my system's going to die. But it works anyway. Yeah?
Nick likes to push the envelope with live streaming by starting up all these apps on his Mac.
Wait, did it crash?
No. Okay. All right. So let's move on to alternative uses for an old Mac. And again, I'm going to keep this relatively short. I'm going to imagine we're in a scenario where you've upgraded your Mac as much as you can. You've installed the latest software that you can, but still it's not enough. And you explained this earlier. This was your situation, Nick. So you end up purchasing yourself a spiffy new M2 MacBook Air or maybe even a new Mac Studio, but you also can't bear to part with a Mac that's been part of your family for 12 years. Well, the good news is that just about anything can be put to some use. So, for example, we're using, I mentioned the old iPhone at my office earlier, we're using an old iPhone 5S at my wife's store for playing music. It's not great as a phone anymore. It has limited capability otherwise, but it can run the version of iOS that it needs to run in order to run the streaming software that we subscribe to for the shop. And guess what? It plays music as well as it ever did. Same with Macs. Even a Mac that can't get the latest version of Mac OS can be put to some use. Now, I'll admit, it takes work, and it doesn't always get around the fact that you've still got old stuff sitting around that maybe you don't want. But I was thinking, what could you do to make sure that a Mac continues to be a productive member of your household? Well, here are 5 of my ideas. I have 5 ideas, and Eric and Nick, I'd like you to chime in with your own as we go along. And if anyone would like to hear more about any of these new uses for old Macs that I'm about to mention, let us know, and we'll dedicate an entire episode to it. But I'm going to just run through these real quick. My first choice is probably a softball here. My first choice is to set up a media server. Now, if you remember how well that old Mac played music and videos when it was new, well, guess what? It still can. So you could connect an external hard drive that can hold everything that you would like to share, fire up iTunes or something like Plex, and let that older Mac handle serving out your media to the household. So that's my first one. Set up a media server. Take that old Mac, set up an external hard drive on it, upgrade the hard drive internally, put as much memory in it as you can, and set it up as a media server. Take all that media that's clogging up space on your MacBook Air, clogging up space on your Mac Studio, with those limited size drives, shuffle it off to this old iMac that's sitting in the corner and let it serve the media for your household. So that's number 1. You guys have anything to add to that?
No, that covers that. Sounds good.
It's going to be an expensive heater, then.
You are absolutely right. It can also dual as a space heater. So that would be your second functionality for it. No, no, my real second option for an old Mac would be to set up a guest computer. So I know this happens less frequently now, now that we all have, mini computers in our pockets. But how many times have you had someone stay with you and innocently ask, and all three of us know how innocent of a question this is, and yet how horrifying we find it. They innocently ask, hey, can I borrow your computer for a couple minutes to look something up? Or to check my email? No, no, you cannot. That's the answer we want to scream. Or we set up the guest account, and then they sign out, and they sign back in, and everything's lost because it's a guest account. Well, that can be problematic as well. So yes, we all have mini computers in our pockets, but it still happens. So you can take that older Mac, set it up in the den, set it up in the guest room, even the kitchen, connect it to your guest Wi-Fi so it's isolated, and it'll be ready to go the next time someone asks. It doesn't have to be on all the time. It doesn't have to be a space heater. But when someone needs to borrow a computer so they can look something up, they can check an order, they can check on an email, whatever they want to do, they can do it. They can do it on there. They can do it safely. And you don't have to worry about it, because if the worst happens, you just erase it and start it fresh again. Nothing is lost because it's just set aside strictly for guest use. So that would be my second option. Now,
No, that's excellent.
Yeah, my third option along those lines, I'm sure all of us, I know all three of us anyway, and probably all of us listening, have an older app or a game that works great on that older Mac, but won't give us anything more than that dreaded no symbol on the latest from Apple. Well, if that's you, then keeping that older Mac around so that you can use those tools or play those games whenever you want is a great use of the older hardware. And I suspect, Nick, that you keep that old Mac Pro around just for that case.
Of course. Although the wife keeps on saying to me, why is it lying around here next, and aren't you going to get rid of it? And I said, no. Because she said, you've got a new computer now. She said, you've got a new Mac Studio. Why do you need the old stuff? I said, oh, I still have a Mac Mini, an older 2011 Mac Mini, which is still hooked up to the TV, because you can get into the internet with that. Yeah? And it's slightly difficult with my the Apple TV. It doesn't work so easy.
Okay. Well, I have a solution. This is off topic here, Nick, but I have a solution for you to share with your wife. The next time she complains about that Mac Pro, say, as soon as I'm done with this, now you've had multiple Mac Pros, you have these sitting around the house. As soon as you're done with it and you no longer need it, you're going to take two of them and you're going to go out back. You're going to find a nice tree. You're going to cut it down. You're going to make a nice butcher block top, and you're going to turn the two Mac Pros into an end table for your family room. That's what you're going to do with it.
I see, yeah. Because it's aluminium and it wouldn't rust, in other words, you're telling me?
It wouldn't rust. And because of the design, the design built into it, it would make a beautiful end table in your room. You can't have the ports facing out. You'd have to have that cheese grater front facing out. But you could use you can use G5 Mac Pros. You can use Intel Mac Pros all the way up through 2012, and you'd have a beautiful beautiful end tables next to the couch.
Yeah.
Isn't there a program in the States, something called Pickers or something? I forget what they call it. Where they go out and buy stuff off the fair, and make something new out of it.
That's right. Okay, I promised five uses for old Macs when you no longer want to use it as your primary computer anymore. My number 4 is if you ever wished you had extra storage on your network, but you didn't quite want to drop $500 on a new NAS, or I should say network attached storage box. Well, and it would be more than 500 actually if you get the NAS and you get the drives to go in it. Well, you can turn that old Mac into network attached storage. The tools to do so are built right into Mac OS. All you have to do is go into System Preferences and Sharing and turn on File Sharing. You can select the folders that you would like to share, and you can even set up special access for certain users. Boom, file sharing accomplished. So that's
about RAID?
Yeah, that's my number 4. And then my number 5 is a little bit of an odd one, I guess, but this is something I came across the other day. I wrote it down. It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense to me anyway. I started podcasting in 2005, and the hardware that I used to podcast in 2005 could still work for that purpose to this day. So why not turn that old Mac into a podcasting station? Set it up with Audacity, set it up with a USB mic, set it up with a headset, and start creating the podcast that you always dreamed of. That's my number 5. So 5 old uses, or 5 not old uses, 5 new uses for
your old Mac.
Your old Mac. Turn it into a media server, make it a guest computer, use it for old software, old apps and games, especially old games. I mean, you know, maybe you want to take a trip back to Castle Wolfenstein. Well, this is how you do it. Turn it into a file storage, a NAS box for your network at home, or make it a podcasting station. What do you guys think? How would you use your old Apple hardware?
I think you pretty much covered it.
Exactly the same as you did.
What was that, Nick?
Yeah.
I just said that I think you mentioned everything. I would do most of the stuff myself, although I have a Synology here, so I wouldn't use it as a NAS, yeah. But the other stuff from storing music or you know, your videos or DVD, like as a Plex server, is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it
And
absolutely
as I
is.
said before, you get a great heating system as well.
2 in 1. 2 in 1.
Yeah.
I have a disk station as well. Of course, I do have all my media, my videos and music on there as well. The only thing I would maybe add, which is, again, is kind of an odd one, but I've used it with really good success, is especially in the case of laptops, but any Mac that you can attach a webcam to, you can use them kind of as a poor man's security camera. There's an app out there called iCam, and it actually works on iOS as well. But I used to do it that way until I actually set up actual cameras. But it runs on your Mac. It can do motion recording. Just uses your webcam, and it's really cheap and reasonable. You just ends up using your Wi-Fi, your internet, and you can go. There's an app on your phone, and you can just go check on your, however many Macs or whatever or phones you have around the house set up with the camera, or outside, I guess, and you can use it and look at it and check in on things when you're away. And like I said, if you've already got the Mac and it's too old to do anything else, a lot of times it can still do that. So, which is a nice thing.
That is a fantastic use for the old hardware, and I've seen old phones used for that as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Done the same thing.
Well, then I guess that brings us to knowing when it's time to retire your old friend.
To go to sleep, you mean?
What's that, Nick?
No, I was just kidding. To go to sleep, you mean? At 4 o'clock in the morning.
That's right. That's right.
I'm getting a bit of afraid at the moment because it's dark outside. I've still got 9 sheep I've got to put into bed.
Oh, well, we're almost done. We're almost wrapped up here.
Yeah.
Knowing when to retire your Mac is unfortunately rather simple. It comes down to this. When the cost of maintaining, running, repairing, or updating the Mac is more than you want to spend for the returns that you're going to get on that investment, and I don't just mean monetary investment, I mean investment in time, well, then it is time to consider adding that Mac to your museum of Macs rather than continuing to eke out any more functionality. And I think that's it. I mean, is there, other than hardware failures or investment in time, is there any other reason? And I guess maybe you could speak to this, Nick, because you just did this. Any other reason to say, hey, this Mac Pro just isn't cutting it anymore. I need to get a new Mac?
I think the only reason I got it was for security issues. And the other thing is, I wasn't getting the latest software updates, and that really annoyed me. And certain programs wouldn't. It said every time I said, "Oh, I've got a new program, I could update to it." It said, doesn't run this version you've got, Catalina. It requires Big Sur at the time, or that's the big problem. And because I need to be always up to date with what I use, because as I mentioned, we've got a non-profit organization here, which I use all the software for, basically, like photo editing and everything else. I need something which is reliable, and I must say, although the Mac Pro is a great machine at the moment because it's been kicked off, I have to go to something which I can think is reliable, like the Mac Studio, although it's probably overdressed with being the Max with 32 gigabyte. But at least I've got a machine which I can use for at least probably like the Mac Pro a good 10 years. Because I mean, every year there's going to be a Mac, the M2, M3, or whatever. But this is still a reliable device I can use and be happy to use it and know that for the next so many years I'm getting all the updates from Apple and other companies as well. And that's one of the reasons why I did this. Yeah.
Yep. You are absolutely spot on. I couldn't agree more with those sentiments. And as far as in your case, your old Mac Pro, you probably are actually still using it from time to time. You're using it for some older software. You're using it for something that maybe was unique to that and that won't run on the Mac Studio. And again, you're still getting some use out of it. But when the time comes to finally retire it and you turn it into those end tables, you'll know. You'll know.
I'll be honest with you. It was only about 3 weeks ago I took it out of this room. So that tells you how long I've still had it running parallel, because I couldn't get rid of it.
Yeah, I know. Well, mine is still sitting here. In fact, I'll be honest with you guys. My 2006 Mac Pro is still sitting next to me as well.
Did they make a Mac Pro in 2006, or was it
That
Power
was
Mac?
the first Intel model. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, good. You see how old you are then, Mike.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's all this gray hair you see. Well,
Like
I think that's going to do it for this time. Now, as we continue this series, we're going to look at some other more inventive ways to keep that older Mac hardware running, including a couple alternative operating systems and, yes, maybe even a hack or two. So don't forget, if you would like to share your thoughts on any happenings in the world of Apple, some of your own tips or tricks for updating your Apple hardware and software, well, you can leave those comments in the show notes, or you can drop me a line, mike@formacguysonly.com. Now, one thing before we do the rest of our wrap up here, Nick, you've mentioned this a couple times. I hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot, but I feel it's very important. Knowing what it is, I would like you to tell folks a little bit about your nonprofit and what you do. If you don't mind taking a couple minutes and let folks know about it, because I think it's a real worthwhile endeavor, and I think more folks need to know about it.
Okay, sure. We have an animal sanctuary called Pure Oase and Regenbogen. That's a nice word, anyway. And basically, we've taken over older, like former laboratory animals like sheep, dogs, cats, and mini pigs, things like that. Or not things. They're animals are not things. You understand? But we give them a nice nice life here where I live, and Beata as well. and we also do lots of stuff outside for other people as well, and look for new homes for when somebody dies or somebody's in the hospital. Then instead of going to the pond, or what did they call them in the States? To the shelter, not shelter.
The shelter.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You see, I'm getting old, and we try to find nice homes for that as well. And we've been doing it for at least 20 years. And what else can I think about it? Yeah? But it's a nice feeling to give like a dog or a cat a nice new home, and you get some enjoyment out of it, I guess. Yeah.
And I know
I know.
from
I
our,
know it's
go ahead.
hard work. It's very sometimes because we're both what do you say, pensioners, as I say, or are retired. And so they wake up like, as I said, 4 o'clock in the morning. Then you have to give them pills for the heart and this
yeah.
and that. Then you have to feed them, and do other things. Then you have to go to the vet, and they have to do this and that, and all the stuff. And it takes it's time consuming, the whole thing, but it's good as well, because there's not many people around here where we are do that kind of stuff. Oh, by the way, my wife's an American citizen, so she says she likes that anyway. What we're actually doing and what you're doing as well. She said, oh, you're a nice guy.
No.
That's personally. Yeah?
I know from our conversations privately how much you and your wife care for these animals, and I know how much effort you put into making sure that they're safe and well taken care of and have a good life or within your sanctuary. And I just wanted more people to know about it. So I'm going to make sure for anyone who would like to learn more about your nonprofit to put a link in the show notes so that they can
Well,
visit your website and help out if they would like to.
okay, great.
It'd be great.
Well, then I think with that said, thank you, gentlemen. Let's go ahead and wrap things up this week. That's going to do it for this episode of For Mac Guys Only. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Remember, I do love to get your letters. If you have any comments about the show, a tip to share, or a software or hardware problem with your Mac, you can write to me, mike@formacguysonly.com. If you would like to share your feedback with anyone on Team For Mac Guys Only, our email and social network addresses can be found on the Meet Team For Mac Guys Only page at formacguysonly.com. Eric, of course, you can be reached. Wrong button there. There's Eric. You can be reached at eric@formacguysonly.com. That's the best way to get a hold of you, of course. And Nick, if someone would like to get a hold of you, we're going to put the link in the show notes, but is there any other way that you would like folks to reach out to you if they would like to?
Just the email, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that
And
fine?
we'll make sure that the link to your website, which of course has contact information, is in the show notes as well.
We love donations, by the way, for the animals, because everything we do is is out of our only through donations and our personal,
It all goes
stuff
to a
we put
good
in.
cause.
And,
It all goes to a good
that's
cause.
true. Yes, that is true. Yes.
And of course, we always welcome your comments at our website, formacguysonly.com. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. And thanks to Eric and Nick for joining me this episode. Stay subscribed.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Cheers.